Oscar and Jack were more than brothers. They were mirrors of one another's soul. Oscar, the elder by 4 years, carried himself with the quiet assurance of a man who had conquered the world on his own terms. His success was measured in a thriving business, a spacious home, and a life unburdened by dependency. Jack, meanwhile, lived in the warm, sometimes suffocating glow of his brother's shadow. His marriage to Patricia was his anchor, a partnership built on shared dreams that, as the years wore on, began to feel more like a delicate fiction. Their shared sorrow was a silent guest at every dinner, a ghost in every room. A car accident 5 years prior had left Jack with a spinal injury that, among other things, had rendered him sterile. The diagnosis was a blow that shattered their vision of the future. Patricia, a woman whose kindness was as deep as her resilience, clung to the hope of a miracle. She endured the sidelong glances at family gatherings, the whispered "bless her heart" from pitying aunts, and the outright mockery from less charitable acquaintances. The word barren was a label she wore like a scar. "We could adopt," she suggested one evening, her voice barely a whisper in the dimly lit living room. "There are so many children who need a home, Jack. We could give one a loving family." Jack's reaction was always the same, a visceral, immediate rejection. His face would darken, his hands would clench. "No," he'd snap, his voice brittle. "I will not raise another man's child. I will not have a stranger's bloodline carrying my name." The topic was a landmine, and Patricia learned to tread lightly around it, her own desperation growing with each passing childless month. The idea, when it came to Jack, did not arrive as a lightning bolt of insanity, but as a slow, creeping solution born of sleepless nights and corrosive shame. It was a secret so profound, so audacious, that it could only be shared with one person. He drove to Oscar's modern, minimalist home, a place that suddenly felt like a fortress of his brother's unblemished life. "Oscar, I need your help," Jack began, his voice ragged. He laid out the plan with the desperate logic of a drowning man, his words tumbling out in a rushed, chaotic stream. "You, with Patricia. The child would be ours, but it would be your blood. Our blood. No one would ever know." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Oscar stared at his brother as if seeing a stranger. A storm of disgust, pity, and fury brewed in his eyes. He stood up, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "If you weren't my little brother," Oscar said, his voice low and dangerous, "I would have killed you for suggesting that. How dare you? How dare you ask me to defile your wife, my sister-in-law, for your pride?" Jack didn't flinch. He poured out his soul, describing Patricia's silent tears, the hollow look in her eyes, his own terror of growing old without a legacy. He pleaded not as a man, but as a broken boy. "Just think about it," he whispered before leaving Oscar alone in his perfect, empty house. For a week, Oscar wrestled with the monstrous request. The bond of brotherhood warred with every moral fiber in his body. Finally, he called Jack. "I'll do it," he said, the words tasting like ash. The joy on the other end of the line was palpable, a stark contrast to the leaden weight in Oscar's soul. "Are you sure about this, Jack?" "Absolutely sure." "I know what I'm doing," Jack assured him, the desperation in his voice mistakable for conviction. "I'll talk to Patricia." Jack's conversation with Patricia was a far cry from his pleading with Oscar. He presented it over a candlelit dinner, a strategic move he hoped would soften the blow. As he laid out the plan, Patricia's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally, horrified comprehension. "No, Jack," she stammered, pushing her plate away. "This is a joke. Tell me this is some sick joke." Her voice was rising, edged with hysteria. "It's the only way, Pat," Jack insisted, his tone pragmatic, cold. It's the only way we can have a child that is truly part of this family. You'll finally be a mother. We'll be a family. It was that last word, family, that broke her. After a week of tense silence and tearful arguments, her resistance, worn thin by years of longing, finally crumbled. I'll do it, she said flatly, her spirit feeling already severed from her body. The night she left for Oscar's house, Jack sat in the deepening dark, a bottle of whiskey his only companion. The reality of what he had set in motion crashed down upon him. The image of his wife and his brother together became an intolerable cinema in his mind. He stumbled into his car and sped to Oscar's, intercepting Patricia just as she was leaving, her face a mask of numb resignation. "Pat, I've changed my mind," he slurred, grabbing her arm. "Let's not do this. It was stupid. I'm sorry." Patricia looked at him, her eyes empty. All the love and fight had been drained out of her. "It's too late, Jack," she said softly, pulling her arm away and walking past him into the night. The pregnancy test confirmed their new reality a month later. Patricia wept with a joy she had almost forgotten she could feel. She cradled her still flat stomach, a future finally blooming within her. She rushed to tell Jack, expecting to see her own happiness reflected in his eyes. Instead, she found a wall of ice. "Get rid of it," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. The world tilted on its axis. "What? Jack, this is what you wanted. This is our baby." "It's not my baby," he roared, the veneer of control shattering. "I can't do this. I won't. If you keep it, you can't stay here." The fight was brutal, a whirlwind of shattered glass and broken promises. The next day, Jack packed her bags and threw her out. Lost and terrified, Patricia went to the only person of authority she thought could help, her mother-in-law, Martha. Martha was a pillar of old-school integrity. She listened as Patricia, omitting the damning secret, spoke of Jack's rejection and her pregnancy. Martha's fury was immediate and formidable. She took Patricia by the hand and marched her back to her son's house. "You will take back your wife," Martha commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. "You will honor your vows and your child, or you will no longer be a son of mine." Under the weight of his mother's judgment, Jack capitulated. He nodded, his jaw tight, and let Patricia back in. But the house was no longer a home. It was a gilded cage. Jack moved through it like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, sleeping in the guest room, his touch never gracing her skin. The silence between them was a living entity, feeding on Patricia's loneliness. Starved for a kind word, for any semblance of understanding, Patricia found herself driving to Oscar's house once more. This time she went not out of duty, but out of desperation. She poured her heart out, describing the chilling silence, the emotional abandonment, the profound isolation. Oscar listened, his own guilt and concern for her warring within him. He offered a comforting hand, a sympathetic embrace. In the storm of their shared, complicated grief, his guilt, her loneliness, the boundaries blurred. One thing led to another, and in a moment of weakness that felt terrifyingly like solace, they slept together again. She returned home late, her body and soul heavy with a new layer of shame. Jack was waiting for her, his eyes burning in the dark. "Where were you?" he demanded. "I went for a drive," she lied, her voice trembling. He was on her in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders, shaking her. "Don't lie to me. Were you with him? Were you with my brother?" Under the force of his rage, her resolve broke. "Yes," she cried. "But you pushed me there, Jack. You left me with nothing." Jack released her as if she were on fire. He didn't say another word, simply turned and walked away, a terrifying calm settling over him. For 2 days, the house was a tomb. Then, on the third morning, Patricia woke to the smell of breakfast. Jack was standing by her bedside with a tray, a gentle, apologetic smile on his face. "I'm sorry, Pat," he said, his voice soft. "I've been a monster. I love you. Let's make our marriage work. Let's spend the day together. Just us." Patricia's heart, so fragile and desperate to believe, soared. This was the Jack she had fallen in love with. She embraced him, tears of relief streaming down her face. She thought the madness was finally over. The day was perfect, a cruel and beautiful echo of their happier past. As evening fell, Jack suggested a bath to help her relax. "Let me take care of you," he said, his voice a soothing balm. He ran the water, filling the tub with warm, fragrant bubbles. He helped her in, kissing her forehead. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "I have a surprise for you." Trusting, hopeful, Patricia closed her eyes. A smile played on her lips. This was the redemption she had prayed for. Instead of a surprise gift, she felt a searing, unimaginable pain in her abdomen. Her eyes flew open to see Jack, his face a mask of serene madness, pulling a knife from her stomach. The water around her bloomed a deep, violent red. Her scream was a raw, guttural thing that tore through the walls of the house and into the quiet neighborhood. It was a sound of betrayal so absolute it seemed to stop time. Neighbors, alerted by the terror in that scream, called the police, who arrived to find Jack kneeling by the tub, covered in his wife's blood, whispering, "It's mine now, it's all mine." The trial was swift and merciless. In the sterile, unforgiving light of the courtroom, the whole sordid truth was laid bare. The secret arrangement, the desperate deal between brothers, the second night of passion born from loneliness, and the final brutal betrayal in the bath. All of it was exposed for the world to see. Jack showed no remorse, speaking of betrayal and poisoned honor in the same broken breath. The court heard it all, but nothing could justify the cold-blooded murder of a pregnant woman. The gavel fell, sentencing him to life in prison, a hollow man who had destroyed the very family he'd sought to create. Oscar attended every day of the trial, his own life in ruins. He had lost a brother, a sister-in-law, and the child that would have been his own. The secret they had sworn to keep had festered and rotted, poisoning everything it touched. He was left with his success, his big, empty house, and the ghost of a family he helped break. But the most profound wreckage was left in the heart of their mother, Martha. She had entered the courtroom a pillar of strength, believing she was there to support a daughter-in-law wronged by a stubborn son. She left it a ghost, her world shattered. The testimony revealed the horrifying chain of events, that the pregnancy she had defended, the child she had forced her son to accept, was the product of his own brother's seed, a plan Jack himself had orchestrated. The realization was a physical blow. She had marched Patricia back into that house. She had commanded Jack to accept the child, unknowingly forcing him to live with the walking, talking evidence of his own humiliation every single day. Her righteous intervention, meant to save a marriage, had instead poured gasoline on the fire of Jack's madness. She never visited Oscar. She could not bear to look at the son who had agreed to the unthinkable. And she never visited Jack in his cell. The image of him holding the knife over Patricia was seared into her mind, forever overwriting the memory of her little boy. Martha lived out her days in a quiet, broken silence. The two sons she had raised with love and morals had conspired in a plot that ended in murder. Her family line, which Jack had been so desperate to preserve, was now ended in disgrace and violence. She was left with the crushing weight of a terrible truth. That sometimes, trying to hold a family together only ensures its complete and utter destruction. In the end, there were no winners. Only the devastating lesson that some secrets are too heavy to bear and some plans, born of a twisted love and desperation, can only end in tragedy. The brothers' bond, once unbreakable, was now just another casualty, buried under the weight of a secret that should never have been, leaving a mother's heart as its final, silent tomb. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment.